Hi and welcome to another episode of Plastic Models by a Regular Dude, and the next portion of Plastic Models for Beginners. We left off with the Tamiya Panzerkampfwagen Mark II. We got that all painted and decaled. So the next logical step in the progression of building models, in order to make them look a little bit more realistic, a little more interesting, and to kind of simulate, what they would look like in their natural environment, the next step is going to be weathering. Basically what weathering means is adding wear and tear to the vehicle, chips, rust, scratches, dirt and grime, oil stains, fuel stains, all the stuff associated with vehicles that see hard use. And then naturally road dust, mud, and other effects like that. So what we're going to do is try and do a little bit of weathering on this vehicle and get it to where it looks a little more realistic and interesting. So first thing I'm going to discuss is some of the products. There's tons of products available. I'm not going to talk about all of them by any stretch of the imagination. I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of the products I use and have used in the past and what works for me. And again, it's the 10 by 10 rule. 10 different people are going to do 10 different things. So this is definitely an area where you, a beginning modeler, or even a person that's progressing along, needs to start developing one's own styles and techniques, and you'll start to figure out what kind of products you like to use better than others. So I'm going to change the camera angle and we'll take a look at some of the products that I have and some of the tools that I use to do the weathering process, and then after I kind of go over all that, then we'll actually begin weathering this tank. So let me change the camera. We'll go on some more. Okay, so this is the vehicle as it sits. Nice and clean, pristine, as discussed in the earlier videos. Looks like it just came off a ship or rail car or whatever, ready to go into action. So as far as weathering goes, there's lots of different techniques, lots of different products, lots of different tools that can be used to do this. Now, basically what you want to do is add, like I said a few minutes ago, wear and tear, and just make the vehicle look used, make it look like what it would look like in its natural environment, such as a battlefield. So as far as products that you can use and techniques, there's quite a few different ones. Now the techniques that I use and that I'm going to demonstrate here, I do in a certain sequence. So once I get the vehicle completed, painted, normally what I do is I spray a gloss coat on the kit. And the reason I do that is normally I spray a gloss coat before I even apply the decals. Now these were nice flat surfaces that these decals were going on, so the gloss coat wasn't as important. I wanted to do it just right out of the box using the basic materials. So what I normally do is I gloss coat. Now not everybody likes to do a gloss coat. I do, and I'll explain later why. But I've done weathering and such without a gloss coat and got equally good results. So the first thing I always do after I give it a gloss coat is I give it a wash. And what a wash is it's paint of one kind or another that's been thinned way down. As Shepard Payne, great modeler from the past, put it, it's more like tinted thinner than paint. You want to have a lot of thinner, whether it be mineral spirits or water, or whatever kind of thinner you use with acrylics, you want to have a really high content of thinner compared to the paint. Now, there are washes that come ready-made, and there are washes you can make yourself. Now, I have in the past used just regular enamel paints like Models, Testors Model Master enamels. I've used those to make my own washes, and they work okay. And if that's what you have, you should be able to get decent results. What I've found is the pigment in that type of paint isn't quite as fine as some paints, so you might get a little more granular appearance and won't be a smooth color graduation. A very popular way to do washes is with just regular artist oil colors. I have a couple of tubes here, M. Graham and Company, which is what my local hobby store craft store carries, hobby and craft store, and then Winton oil color, Winsor, and Newton. The brand isn't really that. There's some people that have certain brands they like, and that's all they'll use. The brand is not really that important. You want to get something halfway decent. But as you can see, these tubes cost about $7. Excuse me, sorry. But a tube this size is going to last you a very, very long time. So it's not much of an investment if you choose to go with this type of wash. And basically what you do is you just use a very little bit of this and add a lot of thinner to where, like I said, you have tinted thinner. Okay, that's one way of doing it. Another way is to use pre-made washes. Now, I use the Vallejo brand. As you can tell, I kind of like the Vallejo brand for certain things because it is acrylic, so there's no odor. It can be thinned with water, or it can be thinned excuse me, with an airbrush thinner for acrylics, which is the way I like to do it. But you can thin it and clean it up with water. Now I say thin it, even though this is already very, very thin, it's actually a little bit thicker than what I normally use for a wash, which is nice because I can use it for different effects. I can use it as it is out of the bottle to get a heavier effect, or I can thin it down to where it flows a little better and it's a little more transparent, so it doesn't have such a harsh look once it's applied. So that's the type of wash that I use, and that's the type that I'm going to demonstrate. So the first thing is a wash. And what a wash is, and I'll demonstrate it, later, is where you get your diluted, thinned down oils, or your acrylic wash, and basically you put it on the vehicle in a couple of different ways. You can go do a complete wash on the whole vehicle and just let it seep into all the nooks and crannies and edges and around bolt heads and recessed detail to give it a little bit of contrast. Or you can do what's called a pin wash, where you just get a little bit on your brush and apply it directly around the individual details. Okay? But that's what a wash is for. What it does is it helps to highlight the detail of the kit. So if I were to put a wash around this hinge right here, if I were to do a pin wash and just tap it, then what it's going to do is it's going to seep through capillary action all around that detail, and it will make it pop a little bit more, so it's not as flat. It'll be a little more three-dimensional. Okay, so that's what a wash is for, and I'll talk more about it and demonstrate it later, but I just want to give you a general idea what it's for. That is one technique that I use, and generally the first one that I do. Another technique that can be used is to rust metal. For example, tracks rust quite a bit. because, you know, if they're all metal tracks, they will rust. Also, mufflers will rust because of the high heat that's generated from the engine. It will rust the paint right off, and that can be done in differing extremities. It's like, you know, if you have an engine that has been running for a whole long time, you know, only parts of it might be rusted. This vehicle's been in service for a while, this whole muffler and tailpipe assembly would be totally rusted. So that's another technique. And there are different ways you can do that. You can do it with paint. You can do it with washes, which are good. If a rust-colored wash is nice, if you had, say, a pretty bad chip on the side of the vehicle, you could apply a wash to where it looks like, you know, because of rain and moisture, that the rust from that big chip has streaked down the vehicle. So there's that. Then you can also use what are called pigments. Now again, Vallejo. The place I get my stuff from carries a lot of Vallejo products. That's why I stick with them, and they work well. But it's a powder, as you can see in there, and it can be applied either dry, or it can be applied and then have a liquid applied to that to help it stick, or you can use what's called a pigment binder, which is an acrylic medium that you mix, and you can get differing consistencies. Like you can have a real thin to where it's almost paint and brush it on, or you can make it quite a bit thicker to where it's almost like a paste, so you can get some texture to go with it. So that's what you can do for rust. Then the pigments can also be used. They come in quite a range of colors, like the ones I have out here right now. I have the rust, I have light sienna, I have green earth, and I have European earth. There's a wide range of different colors. And what you can do with those is you can simulate dust and mud that's accumulated on the vehicle, and it just adds more realism to the vehicle and gives it a little bit more depth, where it's not just all these flat surfaces. It makes it look used and well worn. Some of the other weathering products that I've recently started using are Vallejo's Environment, or Vallejo's other acrylic products. Like this one here is Slimy Grime Dark. It's kind of a greenish brown liquid that you can use for simulating spills or, you know, whatever on the vehicle. There is Fuel Stains, which you could put around fuel filler caps to make it look like when the troops are putting the fuel in the vehicle, they're not that careful and it spills out a little bit, which is super common. I mean, you never see a clean tank, and you can see a lot of fuel spills. Then there is Oil Stains. It's a little bit darker, a little bit thicker, which you can simulate, say around a wheel, where, say, a seal has, you know, just worn out and the lubricating oil is starting to seep out a little bit. So those are the weathering products I'm going to be using for this demonstration on this vehicle. So those are the actual products. Now, as far as the application, this is where cheap brushes come in handy, like really cheap brushes, because they're going to get destroyed. I have a set of brushes. Actually, I have two sets of brushes that I bought at my local Hobby Lobby retail store. They were like $4 or $5 for a set, and these are the different ones. You get nice wide bristles, thicker pointed, a little bit more pointed, and then a really fine detail size. Now, I labeled mine because I like to keep them separately and I don't want to mix them up. I've scratched a W in all these, so I know these are just for washes only. So I only use these when I'm using my model washes. And the reason for that is I have a separate set the same type of set. They're decent brushes, but they're really inexpensive, so if you destroy them, it's no big deal. I use these for, as you can see, I have a P scratched into these because these are the ones I use for pigments. And the reason I did that is because the pigments, because it's a lot more solid, and because of the way I apply it, it just destroys the bristles. They'll work for quite a long time like this, but they do take a lot more abuse, and as you can see, because they're all splayed out and kind of crumpled up, they wouldn't be good for painting anymore or applying washes. So that's what I use these for, because they get a lot more wear. So really for doing the weathering on the vehicle, that's all you really need. You need something to put on it and something to put it on with, in this case some cheap brushes. So I think with that you have an idea of what we're going to be using for this next series of videos. So what I'm going to do in order to prepare for the next video, I am going to spray the vehicle with a clear coat, and for that I'll be using widely available Testors Model Master lacquer overcoat in gloss. Now any clear gloss will work. This just happens to be the one that they carry at the place where I got the paint that I used to paint this. It's inexpensive, it lasts you a good long time, and it gives you a nice even gloss coat. So this is what I'm going to use. And just like when you paint the kit with the spray can, same principles apply with the clear coat. You don't want to go overboard, and it's better to do a number of light coats than one big heavy coat. So this is what I'm going to use. So I'm going to spray this, and then in the next episode, in the next video, we'll actually get to work on the weathering of this vehicle. So as always, thanks for watching Plastic Models by a Regular Dude. And if you have any questions or comments on this next video for the Plastic Models for Beginners, please leave them in the comments below, and I will answer them as quickly and efficiently as I can. So until next time, I will see you all later.